if I was Indiana Jones, I wouldn't be chill. I'd be whipping everything.
We're out in this beautiful, and I live in Southern California. We have this beautiful park and it's beautiful weather, so people are out there. And he goes, stand back. And that first time that he cracks it, he goes, sounds like a gunshot, doesn't it? And sure enough, two cops come over because we were sounding like we were firing rifles in the middle of his park. Now we can join.
Hello.
Thank you so much for your patience, man. I appreciate that.
No, dude, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate that way more.
Oh man, it is truly my pleasure, and I know it's been the most weird hoops to like jump through and get down. And by the way, I'm taking in everything that's behind you, which is incredible.
I was just about to say the exact same back to you.
Oh, this is great. This is actually a picture that my wife took. It's in Notre Dame, looking up in the belfry. Our first trip there. She's an amazing photographer, so you can kind of like see like the core curve of the bell right there. And then there's my booth behind me. This is like I have like a bunch of different setups, and this is my current kind of like I guess Zoom setup, which is really it used to be way cooler and I had like video games happening behind me and stuff, and then I had to switch and it's just but this is me. But I love the Leon the Professional little
Annoyingly, that's my fiance's. That's her only contribution to these shelves. The rest is all me. The one bit that you loved was shall I just get her to do this Zoom call at this point?
I mean, I'm not saying that would be a better conversation, but
I'm saying it would be a better conversation. She's much better than me.
how can I be of service? Thank you so much.
I hope I'm kind of the first person to do this year, but it's nearly your birthday. We're not that far off, so I'm gonna be the first. I'm gonna say happy birthday.
I will readily and happily take those wonderful sentiments, man. It's weird, dude. I've never really understood the people that were like, oh, I'm getting older. I've always wanted to be older. I've never had a problem with getting older, and I'll be 48. And kind of apropos to this conversation, I look at like the when Harrison Ford really started to kind of tick up, comparatively, he did so much later in life than some of his peers and compatriots. And you look at, he was in his 40s when he did Raiders. And I look at that and go, okay, I'm not, and again, comparison is the thief of joy. And that was one of the traps that I had to,
You're good at this.
pardon the pun, why I did it without even planning on it. It's one of the things that I had to avoid, was making sure that while we were doing something that spiritually, aesthetically, thematically, aesthetically needed to feel like it could just perfectly slide in on the shelf between Raiders and Last Crusade, it still was our own thing. Because the reality, oh, by the way, I'm just gonna jump straight into it. That's okay with you.
No, mate, you are good.
I love you gave me one pump for her birthday, and I'm just rolling with it. We had this huge challenge because there is not only is there so much material to pull from with the movies, but then for someone like me, there's all of this bonus content of extrapolation for what people have taken with this character. And like what Indiana Jones means to me may be something different than what it means to you. For me, it's a foundational watershed, defining formative moment for me because I remember being in the theater and I remember watching all of that. I remember getting terrified by watching the Nazis just get obliterated by God. Um, and this was the same thing and then on Sunday we would go to church and I was like, that's the one that we're praying to right now? The guy that melted the dude's face. But I'll never forget, and I'm going to anticipate you're going to ask a question, so maybe it's a good thing for me to just jump into it. But how I got into this is rather a funny story. There are three roles that I have said no to, and I mean, there's more that I've said no to, but The three big ones that I fortunately originally said no to, that someone was able to allow me to show or allow myself to look past my ego and really my own fear and be able to, as David Milch, operate in a place of faith as opposed to a place of fear. And that's Joel, Joker, and Jones. And I originally almost walked out of the audition for, literally had my hand on the door as I was walking out of the audition for The Last of Us.
You should have, because it will never work out for you.
No, the fact that I literally that was my thought when I walked into the casting room for The Last of Us. I looked and I saw the guy that was on the page was sat in every chair in that casting room, and I was like, I'm never going to get this. And so I started to walk out, and the casting director literally caught me and said, "Oh, good, Troy, you're here. They're ready for you." And I walked in, and the rest is history. I walked in and I auditioned for the Joker, and I was like, there's no way I'm going to get it. And so when they offered it to me, I was terrified because I'm a poker player, and there's this phrase at the tables, it's run good, play good, win. And I was running good, I was playing good, and I was afraid if I stepped outside of my comfort zone and did what I thought could potentially bring me down, um, then people were going to realize that I was just kind of a fraud. And so I said no to it. And fortunately, I realized it's not just me that's making this game. There are hundreds of people that are making this game, and hundreds of people that wake up every day with the sole purpose of telling an incredible story in an incredible medium so that people feel like they not can escape their life. I don't think that video games are a form of escape. I think that they're a way of us coping with what happens in our world and seeing how other people that we venerate and we look up to, how they deal with it. That's why I love Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones doesn't just barely uses a gun. He uses his brain more than he uses his fists. He's wickedly charming. He's incredibly intelligent, and he thinks through his problems. He doesn't just willy-nilly, Leroy Jenkins his way into a situation. He's very methodical. And that's the professor, that's the doctor side of him. So when Indiana Jones came around, I'd seen the trailer that Machine Games had put out, the teaser trailer that goes, panning across the table. And I didn't realize that they had not yet cast the titular character. And so all of a sudden I had heard from other people, it's like, hey, they're casting Indiana Jones. And I was like, there's no way I'm touching that. No way I'm touching that. And Tom Keegan, who's our performance director, calls me and says, I like you for this role. And I said, I have a question. Are they looking for Harrison Ford? And he said, absolutely. We need 1981 Harrison Ford. I was like, great. I'm going to give you two names. And you call one of these people and they're going to solve your problem. And he goes, okay, thank you. I like you for this role. And I said, okay, I'll make you a deal. I'll put myself on tape. If you think it's good, I trust you. Send it on. And we had never worked together before. We just knew of each other through reputation. And I said, but dude, if it's bad, do us both a favor and just bury the tape. You know what I mean? Just keep it between us. And he goes, that's a deal. So I send him the tape, and I put myself on tape and I send it to him. And he goes, I'm going to send it on. Crickets for a week. Comes back and he goes, here's another scene. I want to direct you in this one. And so we go on Zoom. This is the middle of COVID. And he goes, okay, great. Thank you so much. We do two scenes. And it was great. I set up a camera, and there's a big scene between Tony Todd's character and mine. And I threw myself up against the bookshelves, and, with this great conversation with Gina, who we had not yet cast, and wonderful scene. And it felt great. I kind of had a hat on, and I was, doing what I could, It was a fun challenge because at that time we weren't getting out a lot. And I was really letting myself go, you know what, you're never going to get it. So you might as well just have fun. And then crickets. And then we want to do another audition. And this time it was about the voice. And he really wanted to hone in on the voice. I was like, hey, great, crickets. And this went on for months. And so finally he goes, we have one more meeting with you. And I was like, whatever you got to do. And I was reminded of a story that Treat Williams, the late great Treat Williams, told when he was auditioning for Hair, because he had originated the role um, on Broadway. And so when it came to do the movie, he's the incumbent, he's the shoe-in. He still had to audition, and I'm going to get the number wrong, but for the purposes of this conversation, it was somewhere upwards of like 20 times that he had auditioned for the director. And the last audition that he did, he started singing his big solo and just started taking off his clothes. And so by the end of it, he's standing there stark naked and he finishes the big note. He goes, "Guys, I literally have no idea what else I can show you." And so it was one of those things where we have one more meeting. I'm like, whatever we got to do, man. And I get on the meeting and it's our creative director, it's Tom Keegan and Todd Howard. And I'm like, this is big. And Todd and I had, met at, in passing at GDC or at a Dice or whatever, but we never actually, met or certainly never worked together. And Todd kicks off the call. He goes, "I want you to know I did not want you in my game," which is an amazing way to start the meeting.
Well, thank you, goodbye.
And I was like, I agree with you. And he goes, "They brought me, they floated your name to me, and I put the kibosh on it immediately." I was like, "I do not want Troy Baker in my game. I don't want Troy Baker to be the solve for our problem of finding Indiana Jones." And he goes, "Then they sent me your tape." He goes, "I did a blind taste test with a lot of people inside and outside of Bethesda." He goes, "You need to know everybody picked you every time." And he goes, "So we believe you could do it." And all of a sudden I remembered my fear and hesitation with Joel. And I remembered my fear and my hesitation with Joker. And I learned from it. I was like, this time I'm going to trust. And so I said, "Gentlemen, how can I be of service?" And we jumped into the story. We jumped into the process. And here we are, over 3 years later now. And hundreds of hours on not only just the mocap stage and in preparation, working with the team, but also in the booth and just talking about and living with this character. And I am so genuinely excited for people to pick up the controller and play this because I think it will be the first time in a game where people go, "I'm Indiana Jones." And it's not about Troy Baker being Indiana Jones, it's about them being Indiana Jones.
Well, I suppose that's the beauty of it being first person as well, that you actually do get to be Indy.
I think it's a wonderful choice. And first of all, Machine Games knows that genre, right? What they've done with Wolfenstein is incredible. And being able to take their pedigree and their pipeline and being able to apply that to this world and these characters and those mechanics, but then also go, this is what I really appreciate about them and really respect about them. I've worked with a lot of people and played a lot of games where they go, "This is what we do, and this is all that we do, and this is what we forever will do." And so they miss the opportunity to be able to play jazz. And I look at the bands that I venerate. Some people, I look at bands like, of course, the Beatles. You look at every record from Hard Day's Night to Revolver to the White Album to Yellow Submarine, and they're constantly trying to iterate and reinvent themselves and go, "You can't pin us down." But even like Aerosmith did that. U2 has continued to do that, where they might get lambasted for their record, but they're like, "Yeah, we're still making records and still trying to change it up and not do what we did for the Joshua Tree." And so what I look at Machine Games is going, this has worked. Now we have an opportunity, and we would be fools to not go, there is this cinematic element that allows us to now introduce this third person perspective and make this also feel like a very cinematic experience that is very akin to the movies that we've grown up and the show that we grew up watching. So to me, it's the marriage between those two. Because if this was third person, I want to be the one who throws the punch. I want to be the one who cracks the whip. I want that first person experience. So I'm always the person who goes, just play it. Reserve judgment until you play it. Either side of it, whether you're like, I can't, it's going to be the best, it's going to be the worst. Wait till you play it, and then you can tell me what you really think.
I know you're a big Indy fan because I know, like, the first film you remembered watching was Raiders of the Lost Ark, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
Hit me. Tell me about that experience.
I remember, I mean, I was way too young, right? So that was 81, so I would have been 5 years old. And, I credit my parents. I want to show you what else I've got around it. I think one of my things is actually in, um, My whip is in my other studio.
Oh, excuse me. At least buy me a drink first.
Yeah, saying out of context, that's a different thing. I do have. I do have. My wife got me one of my favorite things is so I've got the original vinyl,
I love that. I love it more than life itself.
which is incredible to find. And the thing that I love about this is there's a note from Steven Spielberg, and he goes, "Not too long ago in a country not so far away, adventurer archaeologist Indiana Jones embarked on a historically significant search for the lost Ark of the Covenant. Joining him on the supernatural treasure hunt was the London Symphony Orchestra under the baton of composer John Williams." And this is very true to the relationship that Spielberg and Williams has is just him just saying thanks and how much music plays a part to not only Indiana Jones, but also just the music plays a part to this overall experience as well. But yeah, this is one of my, I mean, this is the original LP. I don't have Todd Howard's the fertility god idol, but I do have a wood plaque that's a replica of a leap from the lion's head, and I was not allowed to see Temple in the theater because it was way too supernatural for my parents. For some reason, it was okay if God was killing people, but if it was some like nameless deity, pagan god, they were like, that's absolutely not happening. Um, because we also saw Last Crusade, I was like, there's another guy gets his face melted in that one. Um, and what about the magic that happens when you pour the cup on? Whatever, hand waving all of that puritanical nonsense. For me, it was sitting in that theater, and memories are very interesting because they're not files that our brain keeps. They are the way that we view a memory, the way that I view a memory now as a 48-year-old or almost 48-year-old versus the 5-year-old who sat in that theater is going to be very, very different. And so what I love is the story, the memory is far richer than it was as a 5-year-old now because I do have all the other experiences. I do have being in the arcade and playing that game when Temple of Doom came out and being the quarter eaters. I just remember, to me, that mind chase scene is like the craziest thing ever. Even from John Williams' music to also just the cinematography of how they've captured that. And it's the pursuit of how to tell this story. It's the pursuit of how we use we're on the bleeding edge of the knife for technology and how we can incorporate this. And that's what I love about how we've made this game is our motion capture and facial tech was state of the art. The way that we shot this, Kyle Klutz was our DOP, and it was like in order to have this aesthetic, we need to be shooting the way that Doug Slocum shot Raiders in 81 or 79 and 80. And so we actually had two Aries on dollies with anamorphic lenses framing it the way that Spielberg would have framed this and being able to present this aesthetically and cinematically the way that we would have done in a game. And it really changed the way that we as performers engaged with that mocap stage and with that camera. And it's something that as a director and as an actor, I look at and go, we need to be incorporating these tenements of filmmaking into performance capture for games. Because that is it's a novel concept still. Like we've only really been doing that for the last 12, 15 years. So to be able to see how far we can push that medium and those um, tools in our tool bag to be able to tell even better stories in this medium, that excites me. But I feel like you were asking a question. Yeah, so it was crazy seeing that in the theater when I was 5 years old.
You actually have a much cooler first cinema experience than I do because I think mine was the first Pokemon film. So
Wow.
yours is probably a lot cooler. If I ever get the call up to play like Pikachu in the video game,
There you go. Then you know how to plug that story in from your own experience. It was weird because like growing up, we did not have. I say we didn't have a lot of money. We had zero money. We had no dollars, and um, every once in a while, we could go like on a Tuesday when it was the bargain matinee, we could go see a movie. And I didn't grow up having like a lot of my peers. They grew up in the Sega, the Jaguar, the Mega Drive or the NES. I mean, I grew up. My dad had a PC, so I was a PC gamer way before I was a console gamer. I wasn't a console gamer until my 20s, man, because we didn't have that growing up. My platform of choice was the arcade. Because my parents would drop me off on a Saturday with a $5 bill, crossed fingers that there were no pedos or kidnappers at the mall just lurking about. I look back at it and go, I love my parents. How incredibly irresponsible. Just hoping that there's no guy lurking around going, your parents aren't here. Do you want to get in the back of my 85 Tercel? Are you kidding me?
But again, they wouldn't let you see an Indiana Jones film with goose and ghoulies.
But no Indiana Jones because that had the Oogie Boogies and it was like, so I would go in and there is the feel of the carpet and the lights and the smell of an arcade, man, are just a very unique experience. And it's something that we're not too far away from a Dave and Buster's, and which is not exactly the same experience, but going there with my 5 now almost 6-year-old son and him falling in love with the arcade is something that I love. This is my archaeology. These are my heirlooms of being able to pass on my memories. And sometimes we have to go digging in the dirt to find those memories. But once we do, to some person, it is a hunk of junk, but to us, it is invaluable. And I love that scene between Harrison Ford or between Indy and Belloc, where they're talking about the watch. It's like this is $5 in the market from some seller, and but if I bury it in the sand for 1,000 years, it's a priceless heirloom. And I look at that as well. To some people, going to an arcade or going to the movie or whatever may not be as much of a treasure, but to me, those are my treasures, and they are informing not only me as an adult, as a father, but also as an actor and as a performer inside this medium. It's like, can I can we give someone the same experience that I felt in 81 sitting in that theater? Because they didn't have that and they won't have that, but they can pick up the controller and be dropped in exactly where we're at.
It's clear that you are such an Indy fan, but Indy has so many fans. Like, he must be one of, if not your most beloved character you've played. How nervous were you on day one?
Um, I learned a very valuable lesson as an actor. And I think, someone asked, what is your process? And I thought about this. Anything that I do every time for every job for every character is purely out of superstition. I don't have a process that is a rubber stamp for every project because how limiting, first of all, would that be? My job is to go in and adapt, and I picked this up um, from Gary Oldman when he sat down they were bringing him in because they had to replace an actor on something. I don't remember what it was, but he sat down and he goes, "Gentlemen, how may I be of service?" And that to me, I 100% steal from him because that is my desire. How may I be of service? And so I walked in and I was like, I want to do something that I've never really done before. And so I would only watch Raiders or Temple or Last Crusade. I would wake up and I would put that on. I would go to set when we were shooting in Sweden, and I would, in my dressing room, I would have the Williams score playing. I would pour over the scripts, and I was hanging on real tight to this. And we had shot twice in LA, and then we moved to shooting in Sweden. I hope it's okay that I'm saying that. I'm sure it is. I'll get in trouble.
But I won't, and that's all that matters.
That's all that matters. Um, and then we were first week shooting, and I was hanging on real tight. And there was just this one day on set where I think the screws were just a little too tight that day. And uh, I felt the pressure. And, and it wasn't like a Christian Bale moment or anything like that. But it was definitely my level of frustration and my pressure. I felt Cook. And our performance director Tom Keegan was incredibly kind. Everyone was great, and I kind of realized is like, man, he's really under a lot of pressure to get this done. And I go, we finish the day, and I wrap, and we go in, and I walk into the hotel, and Tony Todd is there waiting for me, and he was like, "Let me buy you a drink, Indy," and I was like, "I would like that." And I decided in that moment, I was like, when I woke up the next morning, and I spent the next weekend, I was like, I'm not gonna watch this. I'm gonna give myself a brain break. I'm gonna give myself a little bit of some distance from Indy. And what I found is that Monday morning I missed him and I was ready to get back to work. And I wasn't feeling so much of like this pressure of having to keep this up. But I realized all of it was out of fear and that I wasn't going to be good enough. And Tom came up to me and he just looked at me. And before we went to our first scene, the only piece of direction he gave me, he goes, trust that it'll be there. And I hung on to those words, just trust that it will be there. And I did. I was like, man, this is because I forgot to have fun. And if you look at Indy in any of the movie, it's the moment where he picks up on a clue and there's just this light that emanates from him. And you realize he's not doing this to solve the mystery. He's not doing this for fight for justice. He's not a superhero. He is an impassioned, borderline obsessed treasure hunter that is in love with bringing the past into his present and finding the value. And I was like, I forgot to have fun with this. And so from that day forward, it was like, let's just have fun. And I realized that this may be the first time that anyone has ever had an engagement with this IP, with these characters, with this story for sure. And so why not let this be the first time? And comparison is the thief of joy. If I've done my work and I know who Indy is, that's going to come through. And as Tom said, just trust that it will be there. Then I don't have to convince you that I'm Indiana Jones. Just got to trust that it's going to be there. And you and I can disagree. It doesn't quite sound like him. It doesn't quite look like him. Great, it's fine. I'm no longer trying to convince people that I can do a Harrison Ford impression. I just want to be Indiana Jones.
You know what I wasn't expecting from that story? For Tony Todd, Candyman and Venom to be your saving grace throughout all of that. You'd expect him to be an evil monster, wouldn't you?
Oh, he is. I want to write and direct something for Tony that shows the passionate, warm, caring, gentle. He will forget more about jazz music than I will ever possibly learn in 2 lifetimes. And he is this deeply spiritual, deeply warm, gracious, giving, passionate, visceral artist, man. He was so much fun working with, and we've known each other for a while now, have worked together on a couple of things, but this is the first time we really ever got to dance. And he threw every inch of his tall form into this role, man. It was inspiring. Everybody did, man. Marios is just I have never seen someone commit to a role as much as he did and be so um still so giving. Like you hear that all the time as like this trope. Oh, he was a very generous actor, but he really was. He just wanted to dance, and he knew the relationship and the symbiosis that Indy and Voss needed to have in order for this thing to work. And he was just this fun tether to be attached to in all of our scenes. Um, Ale Mastronardi is just, I can't say enough about her. She is, this was her first foray into this medium. It is a very daunting uh, process. Like people who are used to working on traditional TV or film, um, to be able to adapt to this thing is you're no longer wearing what you normally look like. And there's something that's very humbling about this process because she's not one of them, but there's a lot of actors who they need the hour and a half in the chair with the makeup, hair and makeup, and they need the wardrobe. They need that external layers to be able to present the character. And I don't fault them for that. I completely understand it. But this process goes, what if all of those things are stripped away? What do you quintessentially know about this character? How deeply centered is it in your being? So that if all of those resources are not available to you, you still can be in that moment that we're trying to craft. And that was the challenge that was put forth from everybody on that call sheet, one on down. And everybody stood up to the challenge. And a lot of that has to come with our incredible team, our performance director, Tom Keegan, Um, all of our producers at between Bethesda and Machine Games and Lucas and Disney, everyone just watching over this, going, we we need to make this the best thing possible, but can we still have fun while we're doing it? Can we still have fun making this thing? And that's what we did every day. It was one of the most rewarding, engaging, interacting things to do. I still miss being on set with all those guys.
Well, you mentioned it was her first time doing something like this. Obviously, you're a veteran at this sort of thing now.
That means I'm old, by the way. Veteran. Lou Diamond Phil's one told me whenever they call you veteran, that means they're handing you your hat. You're old.
Didn't want to say it, but it is your birthday soon. Oh.
You know?
So you are a really, really old veteran now at this sort of thing.
Geriatric, yes.
You this role is not like something you've done before.
No.
Did you do anything when recording this game differently to any of the other games you've done before?
I think that I tried to apply you know, mainly the failures that I had from before, and go into this process. And I'm used to what it feels like to be in a mocap suit and to have a helmet with a camera hanging off of it. I know what that feels like. I know what it feels like to move around in a volume, and I know how to. There's a thing called the magic pocket where if I'm holding on to something and I need to put it away, we're not going to open up a pouch and put it in there. Sometimes we might, but animators hate that. So what we're going to do is we're going to put it back behind us. We're going to drop it, or someone's going to catch it, or someone's going to stand behind me and hold the thing I need to pull out. Like the whip is a great example. It's like, that's not really attached to me, because if I walked around, it's incredibly cumbersome.
Playing 10 minutes of gameplay of you rolling it back up.
I'm just rolling up a whip. So someone would be standing next to me. I was like, come on, we got to get out of here. And someone's literally standing right by my hip, just waiting for me to grab the whip and like pull it out. So, I mean, there's all of these tips and tricks that being on a mocap stage I have learned about. But all of that, everybody makes a game in a different way because every game is different. I mean, it is truly a snowflake. And that's why I say I can't try to make everyone adapt my themselves to my process. My job is to adapt my process to theirs. Um, but Ali is no different from anybody else. She's walking in going, how does this work? And it's like, well, the first thing we're going to do is you have to wear that. She's like, okay. And you have to do these really weird motions so that these cameras see you, how you move. And then we're going to apply all of that. You're going to be in a gray, taped off volume, uh, that you just have to imagine that you are in one of our incredible locations. It's all theater of the mind. And she just dropped in. And I'll never forget, like, we met over Zoom. Like, we did a chemistry read, and they were like, we need to see, we think this is our person, but this is obviously a very um, pivotal relationship. We need to make sure that people buy this. And we still talk about this to this day. It's like we got on Zoom and it was just like, there it is. We both, who she was as Gina and who I was as Indy, matched. And I really credit her for being able to be just a very available actor, to be able to present herself in that format, by the way, to a complete stranger. And we're like, oh, there she is. Uh, there was never any doubt. Like she was absolutely, absolutely the one.
I'm so excited for this game. You do not understand, mate. I'm so excited.
Try being on this side of it, brother.
Yeah, you're right. If I was Indiana Jones, I wouldn't be chill. I would not be. With all due respect to you, I wouldn't be doing this interview right now. I'd be whipping everything.
It's so I could speak to that. My once I got the job, I called a friend of mine and who's a stunt coordinator, and I said, I need your help. I need to learn how to throw a punch and be able to use a whip. And he was like, what have you gotten yourself into? Um, and so I went and I trained with two of the best people. And look, we have incredible stunt coordinators and specifically stunt performers that made everything we did look awesome. The team that worked, the falls they did, the hits that they took, make all of us look incredible. But at the end of the day, if if I don't look like I know how to throw that punch, if I don't look like I know how to use that whip, and this is something that I learned on This Western that I did is the whole first week before we started shooting, they called it Cowboy Camp. We were doing this Western,
Sounds really cute.
and which is, yeah, horribly emasculating. It's like, all right, boys, Cowboy Camp. Ugh. And we're out in the desert, and they're like, you're going to learn how to tack a horse. You're going to learn how to mount that horse. You're going to learn how to shoe a horse. Because if we're shooting with you and we have you in the background and you're just kind of doing bits and bobs and business, you need to look like that's not just you going, I guess I'm trying to keep busy. We need to believe that you are those characters. And I was like, man, that is absolutely true. Whether or not I ever use the whip, whether or not I ever use a gun, or whether or not I ever throw a punch, if you don't believe, and I don't stand the way that person who knows how to do those things does, you're not going to buy the deeply empathetic, pathetic moments that we're trying to craft. So I went and I spent days training with this incredible fight coordinator, Simon Ree, who the first time he goes like, "Let me see your punch," and I started doing, he goes, "Wrong." I was like, "Okay." I was like, "Man, I thought I had something here." And then I trained with Doc Duhame, who is one of, if not the best people to who use bullwhips in the industry. He's an incredible stunt coordinator in his own right. And he said, meet me at this park. Again, this is all during COVID. He goes, meet me in this park. So we have to meet. Obviously, we want to meet in an outdoor space. But, and I'll never forget this. He was like, make sure you wear long sleeves and, maybe something that covers your neck. And when the cops come, not if the cops come, when the cops come, just let me do the talking. And I was like, what is about to happen? And sure enough, we're out in this beautiful, I live in Southern California. We have this beautiful park and it's beautiful weather. So people are out there, and he has three whips. There's a 6 foot, an 8 foot, and a 10 foot whip. He goes, a 6 foot is typically what you'll see as a trick whip. That's it's got a shorter throw. The 8 foot whip is what most people will use for camera. And if you ever have a 10 foot rope or a 10 foot whip, that's probably sitting there on their hip because it just looks cool because it's all coiled up. No one ever uses a 10 foot whip. It's just too far of a throw. And so he goes, I'm gonna practice on the 8 foot whip. And he goes, stand back. And that first time that he cracks it, he goes, sounds like a gunshot, doesn't it? And sure enough, two cops come over and he walks up, he's like, how you doing, boys? And talks to him, and they're like, kind of going back and forth. I just kind of see them pantomiming this conversation. They were like, have a good day, and left because we were sounding like we were firing rifles in the middle of this park. But him being able to walk is like, it's, he goes, even just if you're just walking around coiling this whip, you need to know how this feels in your hand. What does the weight feel like? Because there is this fear that you have to get over of moving this thing behind you, because it is a beautifully fluid instrument. And I love the story of why the whip was even involved, is because it was, what is not a weapon that could be used as a weapon? It was the prop master that came up with this idea of a whip. And knowing what that felt like on my hip, knowing what it felt like as far as what does that look like to be able to, if you're about to get into a fight with somebody, dropping that whip behind you and getting ready for a fight, just informed my stance. It first of all, it's fun just to kind of pretend. So there was a lot of training that we did beforehand, to make sure that, again, whether we used it or not, because that, I think that's very much Indiana Jones. I don't want to have to use this. He doesn't go, okay, today's the day I'm going to use my bullwhip, but if I have to, I'm ready. And that was the position that I took too.
So you can now throw a punch, you can now crack a whip. What differences does your Indy have against Harrison Ford's Indy?
I mean, man, I think that's probably up for people to judge. There is just inherently who Harrison is as a person is going to inform every decision that he has. And even so much, not only that, but shooting this where they shot in 1981, those circumstances, I think about the famous scene in the marketplace, with the reason why he wanted to pull the gun was because he was literally sick. That's such an iconic moment to us that we now make canonical to who Indiana Jones is, but that was just literally born out of necessity because he was like, "Can I please just go back to my trailer and continue getting sick?" So I look at this and go, "There's this striking of the balance between who is Indy in this moment and why? And Indy is very much someone who lives moment to moment. So if, which I struggle with as well, pulling out my own personal encyclopedia of Indiana Jones, going, well, according to canon, he wouldn't do this. That's when we stop being who Indiana Jones, because he was like, put the book down and you need to jump. It's reach for the vine. If you can't, if the whip is taken from you, how am I getting from over here to over there? Um, so I think that there's naturally just going to be inherent differences because of who I am as a person, how we were shooting this, when we were shooting this, what the scenes call for. And so for me, it's not so much of did we color within the lines well enough to make you believe that this is just like Indiana Jones from Raiders of the Lost Ark, or just like Indiana Jones from Temple, or just like Indiana Jones from Last Crusade. But to me, it is more about, does this feel like Indiana Jones and the Great Circle? Does this feel like the Indiana Jones that we needed for this story? And I believe that answer is yes.
I am so excited for this.
Thank you.
Honestly, I can't like Indiana Jones.
Thank you.
If you don't mind, can we talk a little bit about another game that you've done? The Last of Us, I'm assuming you've heard of that?
Sure, we can talk about it for a second. What you got?
Well, I mean, it's been about 11 years since the game's been out now, and that means 11 years of talking about it. I assume you've answered so many questions about it. But is there a question about The Last of Us that you've never been asked, and I can just ask it? You can come up with a really spontaneous answer then.
It's funny because I always think that I know what question I'm going to be asked, and then someone asks one. Um, and this weekend somebody asked it, and I was like, I've never thought about that. And to me, that is a testament to what this medium can do. Is that 11 years on, 12 years on, 15 years on, people that I talk to that are you know, looking at Peter Cullen, or people who I was, next to icons of the industry. And I'm sure that someone's going to walk up to Harrison Ford and go, let me ask you a question about, Blade Runner, or let me ask you a question about Indiana Jones. Something is like, my God, that was so long ago. But that to me is the beauty of this medium, is that the stories that people will tell based upon their experience of ours, of experiencing our story, is almost, should be, if we do our job, should be better than the story that we told. If we can tell this story and raise more questions than we answer, then that to me is the mark of us telling a good story. And that's whether it be The Last of Us, whether it be Great Circle, whether it be any of the thing that I'm honored enough to be a part of. That is the thing that I set out to do, is like, I'm going to tell you our story, but I want you to go and tell your version of this story. And to speak lightly on The Last of Us, the thing that has been a shining example of is when you tell a really great story, people will now fold that into their own story and then become tellers of their own story. And that to me is just one of the best things that we could possibly do. What an incredible opportunity to be able to be a part of somebody else's story, and the stories that people have told specifically about playing games, about how this pulled them through a really dark time in their life. And we saw that with COVID. Like when we were starting to make this game, we knew that what people needed more than anything was the opportunity to feel like they were adventurers, to feel like they were not confined to their space, but that they could venture out into the world, that there still was beauty and wonder and treasures to be found in this world. And that you said before is like, how is our indie going to be different from what we've seen before? I think that people are going to view it through that lens. We rediscovered what it was really like to be trapped, to be up against a huge challenge. Hi, butterfly. Just beautiful butterfly just coming up against my window. Hello.
I might edit it so that looks like how you're introducing me. Hi, Butterfly. I'm like, oh, Troy.
Yeah, hello, butterfly. Um, so anyway, I mean, I clearly, you could tell that I could go on and on about this, and I understand that at the end of the day, what we're doing is making an awesome game. For me, it's more than just that. It's even more than just literally a dream come true. This is this to me is something that all I ever want to do is just make a game I want to play. Um, and if that was the only goal, then I mean, we just overshot that by epic proportions. But I do believe that we've made a game that not only I want to play, but other people want to play. And I do believe that we've told a story that not only sits on the shelf right next to any other Indiana Jones story, but it's another story that I think people are going to find truly unique, novel, and if it's their first time meeting this character, it's going to make them go back and want to see what there is, what they've missed.
I mean, I love the way you talk about this. Like it is your dream. You must have some mad pinch me moments throughout your career. What's been the one moment, whether it's working on a film, promoting it, or even playing a game that you've just gone, wow, this is my best memory?
Dude, I mean, not being glib, but there are literally moments every day where I go, I can't believe I get to do this. I can't believe that I'm sitting here next to you talking about this. I can't believe that me talking about me being in Indiana Jones is a fact. Um, and there's this notion that, it's, oh, I'm so lucky. I'm so fortunate. And I'm really working on getting rid of that notion because this isn't luck. Um, I don't need to denigrate the amount of diligence that someone has gone through to cast me. Thumbs up. They, no, nobody like read tea leaves or threw some chicken bones down just to decide to cast me. It's a very diligent process. I've been on the other side of it. It's a incredibly meticulous, exhausting process to go, we're going to trust this role to this person. And so not only that, but also the hard work that I put into this, the dedication that I put into this. I don't take on a project unless I'm going to give it my all. I don't half-ass anything. And so this notion of like, oh, I guess it's just luck. It's not true. It's not luck. It is, or you could go with the famous, aphorism that luck is simply preparation meeting opportunity. I will prepare myself to be ready for that opportunity, but someone still has to be willing to give me that opportunity. And that's when we find something truly magical. So for me, it's like this year, I am more excited about this year, and I was more excited about last year, and I'm hoping that I'm more excited about next year. I can't wait for this game to come out. I can't wait for people to be able to see more about it. But every moment is true. I'm not being glib, man. Every moment is a pinch me moment. I have a beautiful family, an amazing wife, an incredible son. I have a career that I am, and a list of credits that I am over the moon grateful for. And I have a pipeline filled with projects that are coming up that are more than anything going to be some of the most challenging ones that I've ever done before. That to me is the pinch me moment. It's and being able to dog ear some of those and going, if I could bamf back in time and look at that kid who is the credits have just rolled on Raiders of the Lost Ark and just bamf in front of him for 3 seconds, go, kid, you're not gonna believe this. You know, I wish that I could, if for no other reason, to just encourage that 5-year-old to never stop dreaming, and to remind him that just as he just saw an adventure on the screen, there's an adventure inside of him.
I don't want to get us on a full crying journey now, but the other day I was speaking to Benjamin Byron Davis, and he was telling me like he was so complimentary about your performances. He was
Oh
like,
man,
he was talking about you in The Last of Us, and he was like one of his favorite performances out there.
Big Ben, what a kind, incredibly talented actor too, man.
What he does in Red Dead 2, I think, is one of the best video game performances out there.
Well, it also just doesn't feel like it's a performance. It feels like just they found somebody somehow from the late 19th century and just somehow plugged them into a video game. All of them. So yeah, man, I take those as incredibly kind words, man.
At one point, I was almost like, "All right, Ben, get a room, chill out." Whose performance within a video game astounds you? Is there one person?
Oh man. Um, there's not one. To equal that, not only Ben but also Roger Clark's performance is incredibly inspiring. He is such again viciously talented actor. Ashley Johnson, man, she is incredibly. She was inspiring. Nolan North, man, like I did the fact that not only got to work with Nolan, but count him as a friend today, and was able to star opposite of him in the franchise that I couldn't. I loved playing and I just wanted to be a part of. Like that performance is inspiring. And to be really, really honest with you, um, the people that the actors that I got to work with on this, man, we knew every day when we were going to set, we were making something special. And their performances are inspiring. And it's so much fun to see them come online from being the goofy people in mocap suits on a mocap stage to actually seeing them work in engine. Um, this is what it's one of the best things about making games is it's always like Christmas because it's always better than the movie that was in my mind.
You mentioned Ashley. Working with her must have just been pure joy.
Oh, pure joy and sorrow and love, and it's a whole mix of those things too. But anyway, I could go on and on and on about this all day, and I appreciate you giving me the chance to gush about clearly um, something that I am deeply passionate and deeply excited about. And I hope that we get the opportunity to talk more about this because there's definitely going to be more that we get to show people before they finally get their hands on this game later this year.
The way you are collecting these roles is like these iconic roles is like collecting infinity stones to me.
Yeah,
You've even played like Batman, Robin, Jason Todd, like you've played everyone in the Batman universe. I'm waiting for you to be Poison Ivy at this point.
sure.
There are so many speculations about who you could be playing in video games, left, right, and center. But have you seen the rumors that your voice is so identical to the voice in the Grand Theft Auto 6 trailer?
He says one word. He says trust. This is what's funny. And to be honest with you, this is a great lesson for me is um, the perception that that right there is a lesson in perception. So people think and they just automatically assume. And I want that guy to whoever it is to get credit for his work because I'm sure it's going to be great. And I know many people who've worked for Rockstar, Roger Clark, Ned Luke included, that that's a grind, man. Like those guys pour themselves into those characters and they deserve all of the credit for their work. It's not me. Um, but I count it as a compliment. If people just kind of associate, especially if they think it's good and they associate me with it, that's a really good compliment. Um, but there is something about perception, like Todd Howard, him going, I don't want Troy Baker in my game because Troy Baker's in every game. Listen, man, whoever thought that that would be a problem of, whoever thought that having a lot of work would get you, prevent you from getting work. So to me, it's a reminder that I've had an incredibly remarkable career. That the career that I've been able and the credits that I've been able to amass and the characters I've been able to play, it's by definition truly remarkable. That is not lost on me. And I am exceedingly grateful for that. I also need to make sure that I am being a good steward of those credits and that career in this industry. And typically, if there's ever a role people are like, you weren't that great in it, I probably should have said no to it. You know? It's to me, it's the ones where people go, I had no idea that was you. Those are the ones that I go, I really did my job. And this is no different. When people did not know that it was me in the trailer, that's when I went, we did our job. Um, because again, my truest desire is that people don't see Troy Baker as Indiana Jones. And they don't even see Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones. They just see Indiana Jones. They see themselves as Indiana Jones. That's when I know that we will have done our job, is if they feel like they're Indiana Jones more than me or Harrison.
Dude, thank you so much for chatting to me. I loved every bit of that.
It's really fun.
And hopefully we get to do it next time and you can show me your whip, which again, I never thought I'd say.
Would you show me your whip? We've only just met. And hopefully I'll be able to do it. I'm in London quite often, so hopefully I'll be able to do it sometime in the UK, maybe at the BAFTAs or something. I'd love to meet you in person.
100%, dude. I would be all over that like a rash. I would love that.
Cheers, man. Thank you for taking the time, dude.
No, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I really enjoyed it.
And tell your partner I love her work.
I won't do that. I won't do that. It's all me. That was all me.
Cheers, mate. Talk to you soon.